Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of HSP TV. I am your host, Barbara, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Brianna Hosack. And we are going to be talking about something that a lot of us are experiencing and going through, and that is loving and leaving a narcissist. I've had this personal experience, and Brianna has even more experience with it. So I've been looking forward to talking about this, not because it's a topic that makes you necessarily happy, but because it's a very important topic. And so many people are struggling with their relationship. And as an empath, we are sort of like the flame that draws in the moth that is the narcissist. So this is a theme for so many of us. So thank you for coming today on the show, Brianna, to talk about your experiences.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited. I'm excited too. And you're right. It's not a pleasant topic, but it's an important one.
Yes. And so when you look at the spectrum of empathy, empaths are on one side of the spectrum and narcissists are on the complete other side of the spectrum. And for narcissists, we highly sensitive people, empath people, we are very attractive because we are always in service of the other. We put them on
Hmm.
the pedestal and we want to make them happy and we want to take care of them. And the narcissist wants to be on that pedestal and wants to be the center of your universe and wants to be adored and waited on hand and foot. So for the narcissist, this is a connection made in heaven. But for
Yeah.
the empath, this is giving, 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 giving until there's nothing left because you're not getting anything in return,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Match made in hell.
Yes, yes.
Complete opposite. Yep. You're so right. Absolutely.
And we don't see that they are a narcissist when we meet them, do we?
No, because the way that they work, it's like a pendulum swing. So it gradually shifts, right? You go from actually, they are able to sort of project this image of themselves that is your ideal. And that's how they catch you in the first place, right? And then um, it's this gradual pendulum swing where, things seem good and you're kind of in this range. And then it gets a little worse and it's shocking. And then just as you're thinking like, oh, I don't like this, and maybe this relationship isn't so great, and all of that, it swings back. It doesn't go quite as good as it was, but it swings back almost all the way. And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, maybe I'm crazy. It's not so bad, right? And then it
Mhm.
swings back a little worse than the last time, and it just keeps doing that and getting worse and worse on that this end, and then coming back and getting not quite as good on this end each time until suddenly you're somewhere where you're going, how did I even end up here? I'm not
Yes.
stupid. I'm a good person. I don't, like there's no reason for me to be in this space. And even, I mean, for myself, and maybe this probably varies, right, for different people. But I'm very outspoken, very like stand in my own power,
Mhm.
very, strong-willed, all of these kinds of things. So for me to be getting walked all over and treated like garbage and all of these things and to be accepting it and to be staying
Yeah.
was like, it was just so out of character. So when I actually was ready to up and leave, people were shocked because they were like, how could you be in that kind of an abusive relationship? Like, are you sure? Like, they didn't really believe that he was that bad, right? Um, because I would never put up with it if it had been a straight shot, somebody doing that. There's no way,
If
right?
he
I would
had
have
been
trampled
doing
him.
that from the first moment you met him, you would have booted him straight
Exactly.
away.
Exactly. And no problems, no questions asked, no heart, no bad feelings about it, nothing, no guilt. Right. But because it was it's such a gradual shift, it entraps you and
Yes.
it convinces you and it slowly wears away. Like, those like Chinese torture or whatever, the water drops hitting, like just that constant little tiny bits of poking where it just
Yes.
destroys. Yeah, it destroys your self-confidence. It destroys any any certainty in anything, and the gaslighting that goes on with it, right? The just like the mind games and the all of that, it really takes you to a point where you don't know what's
I,
real anymore.
they are great actors and they are master manipulators. So in the beginning, they act like a really good guy, a really nice guy. They know exactly what to say and what to do to make you feel special, to make you feel like the only one, to make you feel like they are putting you on a pedestal almost. And it feels really nice, right? To be
Mhm.
loved like that and to have someone look at you like that. And they know exactly that that will get them your adoration and that you will put them right on a pedestal back, and that that will get you to basically want to be doing everything and anything for them. And that's what they want. And then as soon as things start to become a little bit more, then they are master manipulators in turning it around and making you doubt your own sanity, making you
Mhm.
doubt, did I really feel it correctly, or am I overreacting?
Yes. The overreacting and the like, they twist it so that it's like, well, did I misjudge? Right? Did I misunderstand the situation? Did I misread the signals? That, all of it. And it's especially for, like you said, for an empath, right? And I didn't even know what an empath was or a narcissist or any of that when I met him, right? But
No.
I didn't know that I was an empath. And but for an empath specifically, a lot of our knowledge comes from how we feel.
Yes.
So it's not very concrete, right? And so it's
Oh,
so easy to manipulate that and say that's not the truth, and have an empath question themselves, because it's like, well, I mean, it's only a feeling. It's not something that's written on paper. It's not something that I can take to
not black and
court,
white.
right? So it makes it so hard to prove what you were feeling. And yet
Yes.
our feelings are so powerful as empaths. Like, we can trust them. They are accurate, but they really, really make you doubt yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a foundation usually already for that, because a lot of empaths feel like the black sheep in the world, or the misfit, or the alien, or the rebel, or the unicorn, like that they don't belong. And a lot of us are already changing our behavior to fit in. Most of us are trying to dim certain things down or be more what we think other people want us to be. So there's already this sort of basic lack in believing in yourself present, because we measure ourselves according to other people and how they work. And then
Yeah.
on top of that, we want harmony. So that means that when someone is not happy with us, we immediately think, oh my God, what
What did
part
I
of
do
this
wrong?
is my fault?
Yeah.
Is there a fault in there? Did I do something wrong? What did I do wrong? Do I need to apologize?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm not sure statistically how often an empath is born from a narcissist. From what I read an article once about how um, a lot of the time empaths' parents are narcissist also. And my dad was.
Mm,
So, I mean, when you're raised in that state of always being wrong and always having to question and all of that, then of course that's what you do. And so it's so easy to fall into that trap again. And especially when you're uninformed, when you don't know, right? You don't know what an empath is, you don't know what a narcissist is, and you don't know
uh,
that this is something to watch out for. So yeah,
yes.
it's such an easy trap to fall into.
Yes. You're absolutely right. I know that it also comes from my father's side. I'm not quite sure if he was a narcissist. He was diagnosed as a manic depressive, but he
Mm,
definitely also manipulated and was very much only involved in his own thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if
yeah.
narcissist or maybe sociopath is also a part of it. It's
Yeah,
always,
sociopath. Yes. And my dad was not as extreme of a narcissist as my husband was, but it was definitely the foundation that was built. Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and they are, of course, two sides of the spectrum. And my mother is highly sensitive, and they're drawn to each other like moths and flames. So probably your mom is also an empath, the more sensitive one, which was drawn to your dad, and that's usually how things go. And it isn't until you reach a generation, because I don't know how it is for you, but I've struggled with if I can work on myself, if I can do the healing, if I can do the shadow work, then why didn't you, dad? Or why didn't
Yeah.
you, mom?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, for me, yes, I've had those thoughts, but also, I mean, we're in the age of information. We have information at our fingertips and our parents did not. Right. And that's really what it comes down to, is just the lack of information. And it's not because of any poor choice on their part that they didn't have access to that information. Some of this is is sorry, like something that has been discovered since then also, right? So it's not all
Yes.
something that was necessarily understood in the past, or if it was understood by the elite few. It was not something that was common knowledge, right? And it's even today, it's like that pendulum swing again. We've gone so far to the other side where people overuse the term and they sort of don't always have the best understanding of what it means.
Oh,
And
it's very popular to call everybody a narcissist nowadays.
yes. And I think the thing is in reality, we all have, every single person has some
Mm.
empathic qualities and some narcissistic qualities, and we fall on a spectrum, similar to like the autism spectrum or whatever, right? We could be anywhere on there. We might have a little bit, we might have a lot. And most people are somewhere in the middle. So of
Yes.
course we all have some qualities. And so therefore, we make a stupid choice, we do a stupid thing one day, whatever, somebody is like, oh, you have that quality, therefore you are, and they make assumptions.
Mm.
They judge by not enough information, right? Whatever. But there's
Yeah,
um
knowledge plays a big
yeah.
part in it, and I think also times itself, right? Because when my parents were young, you didn't talk about things like this. You didn't talk to other people about it, so you also didn't acknowledge it. And
Mhm.
when I told my mother I'm highly sensitive, her reaction was, "Yes, child, I know I am one too. That's not something to be proud of." And that
Oh,
he was taught by my grandmother with the best of intentions, I'm sure. Because my
yeah.
grandmother had actively lived the Second World War. Here in Europe, people have
Yeah.
actively lived through the war in your country. And they
Yeah.
saw that everybody that was different from everybody else was deported and killed in concentration camps. So she
Yeah.
honestly thought if you were just like everybody else, it was safer and it was better.
Yeah. And I mean, why wouldn't you think that? And that goes across the board to the witch trials and anyone with highly sensitive capabilities. A lot of the time we've got some of those psychic capabilities as well, right? The clairs, and that goes right back to the witch wound and being afraid to speak up, and just all the things combined. And really we've been living in this patriarchal society that tells us that it's unhealthy to have emotion, where actually that's so reversed, right? And that's something that we talk about, like toxic masculine and men not being able to feel their feelings. Well, I couldn't either, and I was a woman. I was told that that was not okay, right? So it's the same. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It's been this culturally ingrained thing where it's not okay to have emotion. It's not okay. And what is an empath? Someone who feels emotion extremely strongly. We feel it from other people, right? We pick up on their emotions. So
Yes. Yeah,
um
you're saying
yeah, so
something
for it
very important here.
to be told that our emotions are wrong or bad, and then to go into a relationship with a narcissist who's telling us that we are
Not
mistaken, that
feeling what we're
we're
feeling.
misjudging everything, that we're crazy, all of these things, it really just fits into the mold of what we've been taught our entire life, right? And so it makes
Yes.
it so easy to question ourselves.
Yeah, that's why we're so susceptible to it. And that's why we are great prey for narcissists to get their claws in. And it takes a strong person to break free from that.
Yes, it does. And it takes, like, you really have to choose to sacrifice a lot, honestly, to leave. It's
Yes.
because, I mean, depending on how long you've been there, right?
And
There's
children.
there may be different factors involved. For myself, there were 3 kids. And there's so much of that. For myself, I was raised in a very religious background. So leaving your husband was it had so
Well
much
done.
stigma with
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And it was a generational cycle that I broke when I left. It was a generational pattern for at least 3 or 4 generations before me. that I know of, and I don't know before that, right? Just because the history isn't there. But um, it was something where every single one in my mother line was going through similar things and being told to stay, right? And I was even told to stay, and I left. So it's I mean, and my mom had the best intentions and the best, she's so well-meaning. She's got that, she was raised that way, and it's this patriarchal religious dogma that is like, nope, you're married, you stay with your husband, you make it work,
Yeah.
all of that. And so when I said that I was thinking about leaving, she was like, no, you stay, you work through it. That's what marriage is all about, right? And it took for me to record an episode of the way that he would yell and scream and swear and call me names and insult and just in general beat me down. Not physically, but to I recorded that and sent that to her, and she was shocked, right? She was like, that's what you're dealing with. And it was when she heard that, she was like, she got more on board. Before that, it was like, no, you work through the problems, you whatever it takes, you do. And I
Yeah.
mean, I was with him for almost 10 years,
Mm.
and I did everything that could be done. I tried everything. I didn't
Mm.
just give up, right?
Yeah.
I was not the type to give up. I'm a long-term relationship type. I'm a, like I will do whatever it takes, all of that kind of thing. And I had done absolutely everything. I had crossed every T and dotted every I, and tried every single option there was. And um, she wasn't aware of any of that because, again, as an empath, we also tend to protect the people that we care about. We don't want to tell them about the things that are hard because we don't want to make them
Yeah,
feel
but
crappy.
also very
So,
difficult. I think if you hadn't recorded what you recorded, it's very
mhm,
difficult to explain what happens to someone who is not there.
yeah.
So that's why I said good for you that you recorded it, because then you don't have to explain it. You just say, this is what happens. Listen to it. And then they can hear the tone, they can hear the voice, they can hear the words, they can feel the energy. Then they can get a real good comprehension of exactly what it is that you're dealing with, because there are a variety of scenarios here. In some cases, indeed, you stay and you work through it. But in the cases of abuse, whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, it doesn't matter. When it's
Mhm.
abuse, that's a hard line. That's a hard no.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I mean, for a past generation, it wasn't, right? It wasn't a hard no. It was, I had my great grandmother was told to go back. She tried to leave as soon as she got married because she found out he was abusive. He was physically abusing her. And it was, nope, go back to your husband. Like,
Yeah.
you just, you wouldn't hear that now, right? It was a very
No.
different culture. So
Yeah.
there's so much stigma, so much dogma to break from. And really, we have to be the pioneers of that. This is the first generation where we're just saying, like, that is unacceptable and leaving is appropriate. And it's a completely new world. So how do we know what to do? How do we, you know what I mean? Like, we're making this up as we go along, right? So it's
Yes, but
um
that's why conversations like these are so important. And that's
yes.
a big reason behind why my TV shows, and also why this specific episode, because um, there is now space to talk about these things. It doesn't have to be put in a very dark hole to never be discussed again anymore. And the more we are open about it, the more other people also find the courage, other women also find the courage to confront their abusive narcissistic partner, or men, because it can also be the other way around.
Yes,
Eh?
it can. Yes,
So
absolutely it can. Yeah,
mostly been talking about a narcissistic man, but there are also plenty of narcissistic women. And men
absolutely.
in a relationship with a narcissistic woman is just as bad as a woman in a relationship with a narcissistic man. And there's no difference in it, but it's becoming more normal to talk about it and to share, and
Mhm.
then also more normal to realize I don't have to put up with this. It
Yeah.
is okay to choose myself. It is okay to choose my happiness. I am not also being a narcissist when I choose myself.
No, and that is that was something that I had to really struggle with, actually, where I was like, well, I'm just, just only putting myself first. And then am I doing that? And I got really stuck in that cycle for a little while. But I think like for me, I have never been afraid to speak my mind. Like I said, I was never I was never this like, oh, I'm terrified, like frightened little woman. That was not me. Right. So
No.
I've always spoken my mind. I've always spoken my truth. And for me, knowing what I know now and, having had like a spiritual awakening, all of these things, I absolutely believe with every ounce of my being that it's my responsibility to speak about it because I was given a voice for a reason. I was given that lack of fear about
Mhm.
speaking my truth, right? Where so many people have this fear of speaking their truth. I don't. And so for me, it's an absolute responsibility that I
Mm.
speak up about it because we need
Yes.
to create that safety for people to speak up about it. We need to create that
Yes.
um for people to even know that it's a thing. So again, when I was in that relationship, I did not know what an empath was. I did not know what a narcissist was. I didn't know any of that stuff. And so the more times we can have this conversation, you and me, but me and anyone else and you and anyone else, like the more
Mm.
times we talk about this, the more chances there are that some person in a narcissistic relationship hears that conversation and goes, damn,
Mhm.
that's what I'm experiencing right now. And then they can start to think about the possibilities because before that, it doesn't even cross your mind. It does
No,
not
you
even,
need to
you
stick
don't
with it.
realize that it's a possibility. Right.
Yeah.
And so you
And I
just,
think
yeah,
especially when children are involved. And when there are no children involved, it can already be difficult to choose yourself and to walk away. But when there are children involved, I can imagine that it becomes even worse. And one child is one child, but two children, three children. I think with how many more children there are, how much more difficult it
yeah,
becomes.
yeah. Well, because, um, I mean, again, with the things that we have been told our whole lives, right, is we are told a child needs his father or a daughter needs her father, right? Kids
Yeah.
need their mothers, kids need their fathers. Like it's, and yeah, they do in a sense, but what we really need is we need a village. We need a community of people who
Mm.
watch out for our kids. And we need people who actually care about them. And um, I mean, we've already mentioned like a narcissist is really good at pretending they care. So they act like it. But um my oldest daughter, for example, was from a previous relationship. So she came in at 3 years old. When I moved in with him, she was 3. And it was, I mean, she experienced just as much of that narcissistic abuse as I did.
Yes,
Right.
because you start to form your memories and your patterns, especially when
Yeah.
you're three. You start your patterns already earlier, but your most memories that you start remembering start around three.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just those are your formative years, right? So we've got a lot of undoing to do with my oldest. And then my two kids by him, they both have their own individual struggles, right? But yeah, it was a matter of I had to convince myself, and it was something that needed to happen. It sounds wrong to say that I had to convince myself, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
That it was the best thing for my kids because you're right. I would have stayed if it was better for them to be with him. I would have stayed. I would have suffered through it forever. Right.
Yeah.
I had to really take a deep, hard look at whether it was what was best for my kids or not. And
Mm-hmm.
really that was the thing. That was the thing that made it so that I could leave was it was not what was best for my kids, that my kids were suffering because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And my oldest started getting really depressed and struggled with self-harm and things like that. And it just all of the things combined, it really got to the point where I was able to like decisively say they're better off away from him, even
Mm-hmm.
if I have to, my younger two still get sent to him for his parenting time for like weekends and what stuff like that. That little bit of time with him alone, unfortunately, is better than 24/7 exposure kind of thing, right? And um unfortunately, like courts aren't in favor of taking kids away from a narcissist. Like that doesn't, it
No,
just is not part of the system right now. So there's no
they also come in
removing them.
flavors, right? So not every narcissist is also bad for the children. That's,
Mm,
I think, also a very difficult situation when your narcissistic partner is really nasty to you, but
hmm.
loves his children and is a really good parent
Right.
for your children.
Yeah. And in my case, that wasn't the case. So it was like, I mean, it's hard to say whether he actually loves his children. I struggle with that one just because
Hmm.
he is an extreme narcissist. And when like on that extreme end, I tend to believe that they have so little empathy that they can't quite comprehend what love actually is. Like they can't put anyone else before themselves, right?
Yeah, I think they mostly love themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So it is hard to say whether there's actual love for his children. He does take care of them physically, absolutely, right?
That's
They're
something.
physically safe with him. Um, but mentally safe, it's questionable, right?
Yeah.
My 4-year-old daughter has said to me multiple times, like, I just want to stay with you. It's like, why? Right? And she can't put that into words yet, but I know why,
Um,
right? It's
and I don't know how it is over there, but here you need to be at least 12 before you can decide with which parent you want to
yeah.
be.
Yeah. I can't legally keep her away from him.
Yeah.
Um
No, so
and
it's also something
and
that still needs to change, right? That the
mhm,
things need to be looked at individually. And I think that also the opinion and the experiences of the child should weigh in more, even when they're just 4.
yeah. I agree, and I think that that's going to be a tough nut to crack as far as the system goes, right? But it's um in the meantime, I think the most important thing is to prepare ourselves to just be on, like, we're batting for our kids. We are the ones that are fighting their fight for them until they're old enough to fight it for themselves, right? And um that takes a lot too. It really takes a lot out of you, and it's a constant thing. And that's the worst part with narcissistic abuse or any emotional, mental, all those kinds of abuse. It's so much harder. And coming from someone who has experienced physical abuse, okay, so for anyone watching this, this is not me, putting down physical abuse or saying it's not as bad. Like it's terrible. But actually mental and emotional abuse and all of that is harder in the sense that there's no proof. There's no recourse for you. So it's really hard to get any sort of authorities on your side
Yeah.
and really backing you up. And so it's this constant cycle now. Having to co-parent with a narcissist is this constant cycle of still having to, even though I've left, of still
Hmm.
having to deal with the mind games and the gaslighting and all of the things that just um it's having to be so on mentally and being like so on top of it and so aware of it all the time and
Yeah.
consistently protecting my energy and my children's energy to like that. It can be very draining, right? So it's something that I'm still going to have to experience. My youngest, like I said, she's 4. I have a long way to go. Right? So um
Yeah. Yeah.
and I know that I have years to go still of like therapy and supporting emotionally my oldest daughter who has so many struggles from that upbringing, being with him. And um there's a lot of, at least in my case, old school thinking, which to me is just patriarchy. So
Yeah.
it's very like women are not equal to men. All of those things. Actually, in the recording that I recorded that I sent to my mom, I recorded him saying, "You can't take my son away from me," but he never mentioned his daughter.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's like it's sort of this constant little thread of just awfulness, right? Where it's like, who does that? Who says something like that? And it's just
Yeah.
it's so constant. And so I'm having to fight for my oldest daughter's mental health. I'm having to fight my son picking up the sexist, misogynistic crap from his dad.
Yeah.
And I'm having to fight to teach my 4-year-old that she matters, because she doesn't think she does. She's got this constant little needling things being put on her, right? Of, you're a girl, so you're not equal. And it's very subtle. It's nothing, it's nothing like, it's not like my ex is sitting there going, you're a girl, so you're not important. He doesn't say those words, but it's like, it's the subtle little things. And even my 4-year-old is picking up on it. And then my son saying only boys are allowed to, and I hear it and I'm just like, red, right? I hit red. I'm like, girls can do anything boys can do. And I get all defensive, right? But it's walking that line of like, I don't need to put him right down to nothing to make him realize that women matter. I have to still allow him to realize that men matter also. And, but I also need to teach him to respect women. So it's a very fine line to walk. And then while defending my youngest and teaching her that girls matter, I'm also like having to say, but boys still matter too. And it's not taking away from one to bring up the other one. Right. And it's such a difficult situation to sort of,
I can imagine. So that would also be incredibly important that you take really good care of yourself.
Yes. It has. And like you mentioned, at first that was really hard because it was this like, if I'm being, it made me feel selfish. It made me think like I'm putting myself first before anyone else. Even now, there are times where mentally I'm at the point of, I would like, if I can, I send them for an extra weekend with him. And that sounds so awful because I'm like, I don't want them around him as much as possible. But if I can't maintain my mental health, then I can't take care of my kids and I can't help to protect them. So sometimes it's this like weighing which is the best option. And sometimes there's no good options. And, my mom will step in and take the kids now and then and things like that, instead of me having to send them to him for an extra weekend. But,
His
I
parents,
mean,
are they also stepping in, or are they also not a great option?
not, yeah.
I was afraid of that.
They are what he came from. So
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
no, they're not, again, physical safety is not in question, stuff like that, but the mental safety and the mental health aspect is with his parents as well. And again, a lot of that old school patriarchal mentality where it's just, and it's a case of like, you see it where the way his dad treats his mom and the way that she allows it, and my children witnessing that and seeing that as normal. Right.
I
So
know all about it. My entire life, I've heard that my brother is the only one that counts because the family name only lives
yeah,
in boys. So they came and brought him presents on his birthday and they forgot about me, even though I'm the oldest. So I know everything about
yeah,
patriarchy and shitty things, and it can have a long-lasting effect well into
yeah,
adulthood, where you then feel that you're not enough or that you're unworthy, and that can cause a whole other thing of problems and thing that you then need to come over.
absolutely. And it's not a one-time thing for anyone who's watching this. Like, you may hear this and have these realizations, and it's not going to be the cure. It's not going to be the end of it. There are layers. It's like peeling an onion, right? There are layer after layer after layer of deconditioning ourselves from what we've been taught our entire lives and reconditioning ourselves into actual self-worth.
Hmm. Yeah.
And realizing, and like, I now talk about this, I lead other people in it, all of that stuff, but I still come up against it. I still come up against deeper layers of it where it's like, dang, there's that thing again. It just, it's coming up out of nowhere. It's sticking its nose in my business and it's getting in my way, right? It's just and every time it's a trauma, and it's an emotional processing experience. Like, you have to go through it. And the only way to get past it is to go through it. And again, when we're raised and taught not to process our emotions and not to speak about them and not to tell anybody and not to prioritize ourselves because we're always supposed to be giving in service to others, again, a very religious background thing there, right? Where it's be all humble and in service to mankind, right? It's just, there's just so much to have to work through. And it's when it's been every word of every day of your entire life, that's not something that's going to go away overnight. So
No.
yeah, learning to take care of yourself is absolutely top priority. And um, for me, for like as an entrepreneur, as a like I own my own business, all of that kind of thing. Sometimes that means putting my self-care above business, and sometimes that makes financial situations hard.
Yeah.
And that is a choice that I have to make sometimes, right? And that I think is one of the things that, coming from, again, that patriarchal background, is you have this also corporate mentality. Corporate America, especially, I'm not sure, maybe not so bad in Europe, maybe it is, but here it's like you push through, you do whatever it takes to make it to the end, and all of this. And it's actually like, I would rather, and I mean, I'm not financially struggling, but I would rather financially struggle um than pass this on one more damn generation.
Exactly. Yes, that's the way
So
I feel as well. Yeah. What would be some last advice that you would give someone who is in a situation like this?
um I mean, we really hit on it with the self-care, but when we talk self-care, a lot of the time people think about like the fluffy stuff, the bubble baths and the, whatever stuff like that. And that's just not self-care at that point. Self-care at that point is making time to be alone so that you can have your own thoughts, so that you can start to actually progress to the point where you're ready to do something about this. It's working on personal development and often spiritual development also, but personal development across the board, because that is where you're going to rediscover your self-worth. And you may not even realize that your self-worth is low at the beginning, but as you start to work on personal development, which I think everybody should, um, you start to you hear things, right? You're listening to a podcast, or you're watching a show, or you're reading a book or whatever, and you go, wait a second. And it just sort of like it gets you thinking. You need to be thinking. You have to be present, not just present, but very intentional with taking time to have quiet thoughts and to be able to actually think things. And that sounds like, it sounds so insignificant, inconsequential, maybe, whatever, but it's everything. If you don't ever have time to sit and think through the situation, you will not be able to understand how bad it is. And you will not be able to see the possibilities for how to fix it. Right.
Yes.
So I I mean, the way that I ended up getting out was I mean, it still took a couple of years, but I started doing a 5 a.m. morning routine. I got up at 5 a.m. so that I could be alone and have quiet and have my own thoughts. And um, I will tell you, as soon as I did that, oh, that made him angry. That made him so angry because I was taking care of me. I was changing who I was. I was regaining my self-worth and therefore my strength, right? And all of it. And that was when the really bad point started, because he was like, how dare you? How dare you not spend every moment that I'm at home with me? How dare you get up and get out of our bed early instead of just staying and being there available to me for sex if I want it? You know what I mean? Like, it literally was just, it was so extreme.
Yeah.
And but I stuck to that, and I was like, no, this is my time. I am on 24/7 for everyone else, and this is the only time I get for me. I've tried doing it at night. It doesn't work. I'm too tired by then. I've tried doing it during the day when the kids are napping. I have too much else to do with meals and cleaning and my
Yeah.
business and everything else. So no, this is my time. This is my only time. And I mean, I was hanging on by a thread at that point. I was so desperate for that quiet so that I could, because my mental health was suffering. I was struggling hard, right? And so I held on to it for dear life. And really that was what it took, was me being able to be quiet, have time to journal, have time to think, have time to process. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's incredibly important, because it's not only getting time to think, but also getting time to process your feelings and everything that's going on. And you need to do that by yourself, because otherwise you're in survival mode, and there is no time for things like that. So thank you
Yeah.
for that wonderful advice. That's indeed really, really great advice. And thank you also for being a guest here today. I think you shared some really valuable wisdom along with your story, which is also going to be really valuable to many other people, men and women alike, in a similar journey. So if you were watching this, I would love it if you could leave us a comment with what was the most eye-opening out of today, or what was the biggest insight you got, or maybe just saying "you go girl" to Brianna because she is so amazing. Show your love, show your support. That would be amazing. And if you want to reach out to Brianna or to me, that is possible. I'll make sure that all the links to reach both of us are included in the show notes below this video. So you can reach Brianna very easily. You can reach me very easily, because you don't have to do this alone if you do not
No,
want
you
to.
don't. No, you don't. And
There
it
you
doesn't
go.
have to be a professional therapist either for you to have someone in your corner. So,
Exactly. Yes. So thank you
not
for
that there's
being here.
anything wrong with a therapist. Sorry.
No, no, definitely not. So sometimes that is the help you need, but sometimes it can
Yeah.
also just be a friend if you just be brave enough to open up and talk about it.
Yeah. And like I said, what we need more than anything is a community so that we all have that, right? So that's that's my whole big thing is building community, and that's what I do in my business and everything. So yeah, anyone that is needs to reach out, wants to reach out, I am always open for that. Absolutely.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here, Brianna, and thank you
Thanks
for
for
being
having
here,
me.
for watching, for listening, and for always supporting this channel. I wish all of us a really great rest of our day, and I look forward to inspiring you again with another beautiful guest in next week's episode. For today, have an amazing rest of your day, and talk soon.
Thank you.